Sometimes it feels like to understand Egypt, you have to understand the whole world, and vice versa. Let's start with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. He led the coup in 2013 and has led Egypt since. His most important regional ally is probably King Abdullah ibn Abdulaziz of Saudi Arabia. Abdullah is the dominant figure in the Gulf Cooperation Council, a group of oil-rich states along the Persian Gulf who mostly support Sisi too. There is an exception, Qatar, which has a more independent foreign policy than the other members of the GCC, but more on that later. One thing that has unified the GCC has been a shared fear of Iran, which unlike them, long ago broke free of US influence. The Gulf remains part of a broad regional coalition, the central figure of which is Israel. Israel keenly supports Sisi, who comes from the military intelligence community, which has a long history of cooperation with the Jewish state. The global superpower that holds this shaky regional alliance together is the United States. The US sees this regional alliance as just part of its global hegemonic project. This same project has pitted it against the leaders of countries in the Bolivarian Revolution, like Venezuela, Bolivia, and Ecuador. They tend to support America's opponents in the Middle East, like Syria and Iran. They've also raised an eyebrow over the coup in Egypt. A more ambiguous figure, from America's point of view, is Turkey's leader Tayyip Erdogan, who opposes Bashar al-Assad in Syria, like the US, but supports Mohamed Morsi in Egypt, against the US's man, Sisi. It's worth noting that during his time in office, Morsi moved to improve relations with Iran, being the first head of state to visit since the revolution of 1979. This is one more reason, along with his status as an elected moderate Islamist, that the Saudis and most of the GCC don't like him, and back the Egyptian military to move against him. The exception within the GCC was Qatar. It generally backs the Muslim Brotherhood, especially through the Al Jazeera satellite TV networks that it funds. This put it briefly in a shaky alliance with Turkey and Egypt. Some thought that these three countries could act as a powerful diplomatic bloc that would move the region towards moderation and peace by offering a middle way and easing tensions between the Israeli-Saudi bloc on one hand and the Iran-Syria resistance bloc on the other. That was before the coup. But some also speculated that this cooling of tensions would benefit the other big outside power with interests in the region, Russia, which would be glad to see the pressure on its regional allies eased. Russia has long backed the Iranian and Syrian governments in part to secure their own geostrategic interests in the region, and in part as a foil to the domination of the region by the United States. Unfortunately for the people of Egypt and the region, it seems like everybody has a stake in their affairs.